Hiya. So this is episode 1, and we are here because too many things in my life have pointed me back to this sort of content, and too many messages have told me to start before I am ready. So, who am I? My name is Analia. Most of you know me as the Explicit Empress, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. So as a recovering perfectionist, it was a difficult undertaking, and that's putting it lightly. But I'll talk a bit more on that a bit later on. So why did I call a podcast Meaningless? Is that something that I believe about the podcast? No. So why would I choose a word like that to call a podcast? Well, the greatest gift that we have as humans is that life is meaningless, and that we get to decide whatever meaning we like to the events that happen to us, to the situations, the relationships, everything. And when good things happen, we find it very easy to think of a good reason. I deserved it, I worked hard. Good karma is another fantastic one. But when bad things happen, we immediately think the worst. You know, the saying, why do bad things happen to good people, is very common, okay? We immediately think the worst. I failed, I did the wrong thing, it wasn't meant for me, I'm not supposed to do that. And we always overthink the future. Now, in our brain, scientifically, and you can look this up, we can actually feel the effects of failure, shame, guilt, disappointment, as if we are living in those moments when we overthink, when we what if the bad. And when we what if the good, we actually don't get the same result. We cannot experience joy and happiness unless we are in the present moment. So we can decide what meaning we give to a situation, and we can decide if the situation was for us to learn, whether it was protecting us from something, whether it was trying to redirect us onto our most aligned path. We don't always have to think the worst, but as humans, we always do. So, to remind us as humans, having this human experience, as a spirit, having this human experience, to remind us of the power that we have to choose the meaning for the things that happen to us, I've called this podcast Meaningless. So who am I really? Well, the fast answer is simply, I am. I am who I am when I wake up in the morning, whether that's one thing or another thing, it is what it is. Now, the longer answer can contain titles, of course. Woman, mama, lover, partner, friend, ex-wife, witch, and I'm sure there's some spicier language that people would use. There are titles for the sort of work that I do. Labels: emotional and spiritual health advisor, tarot reader, higher self life coach, opinionated content creator, astrologist. There are many labels that you could use. But the whole answer, the real answer, is really that I am just a healing spiritual being in a flesh prison like everybody else. And I was born with the ability and life purpose to heal others and to have my voice and thoughts heard by others. And through a hell of a lot of deep self-introspection and shadow work, if you would like to call it that, and research and taking responsibility for my life and my emotional intelligence and awareness of myself, I have undone the filters of the world that muddy our connection to our divine spark, our connection to our inner truth, our connection to our authentic self, to God, whatever you want to call it, the filters that muddy those things. And from that place of healing, I sit here to bring you my voice for anyone that needs to find me. I am and will forever be, like all of you, healing. Everyone that walks on this physical plane right now will be healing. What else am I? Well, anyone fluent in the language of tarot will understand when I say that I am a walking tower moment. And if you are not fluent in the language of tarot, let me give you a little breakdown. The tower in tarot represents chaos, represents upheaval and unavoidable change. It is the image of a tower on fire, and it is unavoidable life change. Now, in the tarot, it comes between two cards. It comes between the devil, which represents powerlessness, hopelessness, addiction, and it comes between the star, which represents spirituality, healing, the period of calm and stability that follows the storm that was the tower. And the star is the granting of a wish. So there I sit, the tower in between the devil and the star. So I find there are a lot of people that experience my energy once. And because I guess when a tower falls, a period of self-introspection must take place. And for a lot of people, this comes with chaos. So consider yourself warned that I, Analia, the explicit empress, could be your tower moment, the moment in between your devil and your wish fulfillment. So let's go back to the discussion of being a recovering perfectionist. Chasing perfection is an escape technique, and the ruthless pursuit of perfection is just disassociation. So from the outside, perfectionism looks like a lot of things. It can look like dragging your feet. It can look like laziness. It can look like never following through, always making plans, always making lists, but never getting started. Now, perfectionism can camouflage itself as idealism. However, idealism is imagining a different future, but the pursuit of perfection is often an exercise of protecting ourselves by anticipating disappointment. So things like feeling like you aren't allowed to do things unless it's perfect the first time. Feeling like you shouldn't be in a relationship unless you know how to create a perfect relationship before you even meet people. Feeling like you shouldn't be able to work a job, take a particular role in your job unless you know how to do it first. And feeling like you shouldn't speak unless you know exactly what you're talking about and have the perfect words to say it. All of those things are chasing perfectionism. But in reality, nothing is perfect. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship, a perfect person for a job. There's no such thing. Now, a perfectionist not only holds themselves to high standards that are invisible, of course, to anyone from the outside world, but they're also reluctant to share their standards with others because they are afraid. They're afraid of not being able to meet those standards, those expectations. So sharing them is scary because then somebody else might hold us accountable. Perfection is really just the internalization of the idea that perfection equals safety, right? That you can't be blamed for anything if there's no mistakes to be found. But of course, perfection doesn't exist. Perfection is disassociation. And the future that we desire and ache for as perfectionists is actually built from practice and doing, not perfection. So why the podcast? Why do I need to add my voice? I guess I want to use this platform to talk about a lot of things. I want to talk about the spiritual awakening we're all currently living in. And I want to do that by talking to people who have had near-death experiences, by people that have walked in dreams, who can communicate with energies that are not physical. I want to hear your spiritual story. I want to hear the spooky, spooky story. I want to talk about emotional awareness and the emotional intelligence that we're all being asked to find. I want to talk about the shift in the energy of the collective that we are currently going through and the poisonous old cycles we are being asked to update. I want to talk about astrology and the universal energy and birth charts and how even if you don't believe a birth chart, the way that it works, self-introspection techniques are helpful, and I want to talk about it. I want to share conversations with you that I have with people who I believe have a greater purpose than just themselves. And of course, this is going to be a mixed bag of things, as is my purpose here, and as is the combination of my Virgo-brained filing cabinet mixed with ADHD. So make sure you subscribe here and on my social media channels. If you would like access to any of my services, make sure you check out my website, and you can find me at Oracle of Crystals in Melbourne. And I'm always available by email, so make sure you hit me up. And remember, we live in a meaningless life. You write that script and get to decide what the meaning is for you. And as always, stay weird.